The moment my name appeared on the charity auction screen, the entire ballroom erupted in laughter. I stood frozen beneath the warm afternoon lights, holding a paper cup of lemonade while hundreds of strangers stared at me as if I were part of the entertainment. My sister had told me she was signing me up for a harmless charity event, but she had conveniently forgotten to mention that I would be auctioned off as a charity date. I wanted the floor to open beneath my feet. Then the auctioneer announced the first bid, and before I could even process what was happening, another voice called out with a higher amount. I looked toward the crowd, expecting to see some stranger playing along with the joke. Instead, I saw someone I had known almost my entire life. My sister's best friend was standing near the front, her eyes fixed on me, and she raised her bidding card again. If you believe kindness still matters, that people deserve second chances, and that one small act can change a life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Heart of Hope. My name is Everett Hale, and at 32, I had become very good at laughing at myself before anyone else could. My life had never turned out the way I imagined it would. I worked as a maintenance supervisor at a small community center, fixing broken doors, leaking pipes, old heating units, and anything else that needed attention. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved the people there. The center gave free meals to struggling families, organized activities for children, and offered temporary support to elderly people who had nowhere else to turn. I had once dreamed of becoming an architect, but after my father died unexpectedly and my mother developed serious financial problems, I gave up college and took whatever work I could find. My younger sister, Maribel, always insisted that I had sacrificed too much for everyone else. She was probably right. Still, I never regretted helping my family. The charity event was held in a beautiful open-air garden behind an old historical mansion. It was supposed to be a fundraiser for children who needed school supplies, winter clothing, and medical assistance. Maribel had been helping organize the event for weeks, and she kept telling me I needed to come because I spent too much time working and never went anywhere. I thought she wanted me there as family. I didn't realize she had planned a surprise. When the host announced the charity date auction, Maribel suddenly disappeared into the crowd, and moments later my photograph appeared on the giant screen behind the stage. Under it were the words, "Everett Hale, the guy who needs to get out more." The crowd laughed. I could hear my sister laughing too. I tried to smile, but inside, something cracked. I had spent years pretending embarrassment didn't hurt, but there are moments when a joke finds the exact wound you've been hiding. The auctioneer began with a small opening bid. A woman near the back raised her card. Someone else laughed and offered more. I stood there pretending it was funny, telling myself that every dollar would help a child. Then a voice from the front called out a much larger amount. I knew that voice instantly. It belonged to Seraphina Vale, my sister's best friend. Seraphina had been around our family since we were teenagers. She had shared holidays with us, sat at our kitchen table, and once spent an entire summer helping my mother recover after an operation. She was intelligent, graceful, confident, and successful. She owned a small interior design company and seemed to walk through life with a certainty I had never possessed. But there was something else about her that always made me uncomfortable. She had known me before life became difficult. She remembered the boy who wanted to design buildings, not the men who fixed broken toilets for a living. Someone challenged her bid. Seraphina raised hers again. Another person laughed and bid higher. She immediately responded. The room became louder with every round, and I could barely breathe. Finally, she offered an amount so high that the auctioneer stopped and stared at her. No one else raised a card. The hammer came down, and the crowd applauded. I walked off the stage with burning cheeks. Seraphina approached me a few moments later, holding the winning card in one hand. I expected her to laugh. Instead, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't understand. She told me she hadn't bought a romantic date. She had bought the opportunity to take me somewhere for an afternoon, because she knew exactly how much I hated being the center of attention and exactly how badly I needed to remember that my life was more than work and responsibility. I tried to dismiss it as another joke, but she refused to let me. The following Saturday afternoon, she picked me up outside the community center. The sun was bright, the streets were busy, and for the first time in years I wasn't rushing somewhere. She took me to a small neighborhood cafe, then to an art museum, and finally to a quiet park overlooking the river. She didn't spend the afternoon trying to impress me. She asked questions. Real questions. She asked why I had stopped drawing. She asked what happened to the architectural sketches I used to make. She asked what I wanted if money, responsibility, and fear were not part of the decision. I didn't know how to answer. Nobody had asked me that in years. Eventually, I admitted that I had thrown away most of my old sketches because looking at them reminded me of the person I thought I would become. Seraphina told me that dreams didn't disappear simply because life became difficult. Sometimes they went quiet because they were waiting for someone to believe in them again. Her words stayed with me long after that afternoon ended. A week later, she showed up at the community center carrying a large cardboard box. Inside were my old architectural drawings. I stared at them in disbelief. She had found them in my mother's storage room after Maribel mentioned that I had once kept them there. Some were wrinkled. Some had faded. One had coffee stains across the corner. But they were mine. Seraphina had taken them to a professional framing shop and had several of the best ones restored. She told me she wasn't trying to change my life for me. She simply wanted to remind me that I was allowed to change it myself. That night, I went home and opened an old laptop I hadn't touched in years. I searched for architectural programs, evening courses, scholarships, and online certifications. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future that wasn't built entirely around survival. But then reality returned. The next morning, my manager told me the community center was facing severe funding problems and might have to close several programs. The children who depended on the center would lose their after-school meals and tutoring. I felt trapped again. I couldn't leave my job to chase an old dream when people were depending on me. When Seraphina heard what was happening, she didn't tell me to abandon the center. Instead, she helped me find a way to do both. She connected the center with a local nonprofit organization that specialized in community development. Together, they created a proposal to renovate an unused section of the building into a learning and design workshop for teenagers. The project needed someone who understood the building and cared about the people inside it. For the first time, I realized that the thing I thought had ruined my dream might actually have prepared me for it. Months passed. I enrolled in evening architectural classes while continuing my work during the day. I was exhausted, sometimes overwhelmed, and more than once I wondered if I had made a mistake. But every time I wanted to quit, I remembered the auction. Not the laughter, not the embarrassment, but the moment Seraphina had raised her card when everyone else was only watching. One afternoon, after my first major project was approved by my instructor, I returned to the community center and found Seraphina sitting outside beneath a tree. I showed her the plans. She smiled, but she didn't congratulate me immediately. Instead, she told me that she had never been bidding against those people because she wanted to win me. She had been bidding because she couldn't stand watching someone with so much potential believe he was worth so little. Those words finally broke through the wall I had built around myself. I realized that the auction hadn't really been about a date. It had been about someone seeing me when I had stopped seeing myself. A year later, the community center opened its renovated youth workshop. The walls were covered with colorful student drawings, handmade models, and architectural plans. Children who had once come there only for free meals were now building tiny houses, bridges, and dream cities. I stood near the entrance watching them, realizing that my life had changed without becoming something completely different. I was still helping people. I was still fixing things. But now I was also building something. Seraphina stood beside me as the afternoon sunlight poured through the windows. Maribel walked over and apologized for the original prank. She admitted that she had only wanted to make me laugh, but she never imagined the joke would become the turning point in my life. I hugged my sister and told her that sometimes the strangest moments lead us exactly where we need to go. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who may have forgotten their own worth, and subscribe to Heart of Hope. Sometimes people don't need someone to save them. Sometimes they simply need someone to believe in them until they can believe in themselves again. And before the story ends, I want to ask you for something special. In the comments, write, "Someone believed in me," if there has ever been a person who encouraged you when you were struggling. Your comment might remind someone else that they are not alone. Because that afternoon, I thought hundreds of people were laughing at me. I thought I had become the punchline of a charity event. I thought the auction was proof that my life had become something embarrassing. But I was wrong. Sometimes a joke becomes a doorway. Sometimes an unexpected person becomes the reason you find your courage again. And sometimes the greatest gift isn't being chosen by someone else. It's finally learning to choose yourself.